Hey guys, this is Christian from Lost in Discovery and welcome back to my Rhythm of War read-along. Today we're going to be talking about part 2 of this fantastic book. Now last week when I asked you guys if you wanted me to chat about the interludes as well, everyone was very keen. So we're going to talk about that first batch of interludes, all of part 2, and then the next batch of interludes after it. So it's going to be a bit of a long one today. Get comfy, get some snacks, get something nice to drink, and let's talk about part 2. Quick disclaimer before I start, it's 42 degrees in Australia today. I might look like I'm dying as I film this. I've got air conditioning, but still it's a tough one today. I've got a window of natural light in front of me and the heat is just like hitting my face. So yeah, if I'm looking a bit shiny today, that's why. Alright, now let's start with the first 3 interludes. And these were really, really interesting. We had Syl, we have Sianat, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, and we had our boy Taravangian. So let's talk about Syl's interlude. It was really, really nice to see how much initiative Syl has in looking after Kaladin, trying to help him through his depression, and basically doing anything she can to help Kaladin kind of build himself up again. I found her conversation with Dalinar really heartwarming, and it just seems like everyone has really good intentions here, but there is not enough research or knowledge about mental health for them to really do anything substantial. And what was also really great was seeing that Syl has a darker side as well. She's not just Miss Happy-Go-Lucky. She almost is like Shallan, where she kind of suppresses that other side of her when she starts to get bad thoughts or uncomfortable feelings. So that was a nice way to kind of flesh Syl out a bit more. Moving on to the next interlude, Sianat. I'm going to say that, Sianat. We got a lot of information about how the experience is for one of the Unmade, how she's kind of stuck between the physical and cognitive realm of Shadesmar, and she can kind of exist in both at the same time but not really exist. It was a really cool imagery in how she's kind of flowing. It was really, really cool. Now, we kind of got a sense for her plans overall, but what I found most interesting is how she says she's going to look at Taravangian because Taravangian is a weapon. Now, I think that really hints about some grander scheme going on with her. I'm thinking that she might be wanting to use Taravangian as a pawn in whatever game she's playing and to perhaps overthrow Odium in some fashion. It feels like there's another layer to that going on. And then we went on to Taravangian. Man, I love Taravangian. I know like he does horrible things, but when you read from his POV, it's just so nice. It's just like his team loves him and you kind of get sucked into it. And it was nice to see how emotional and attached they were to Taravangian, how he knows he's basically done everything he can and he's kind of shown his cards to Dalinar and everybody, so they're going to end up killing him when he sends those armies to betray them. It was a cool chapter seeing how all his friends were saying goodbye, his big manly bodyguard was crying, and he burnt the diagram, which was, wow, didn't see that one coming. There was one interesting tidbit in this chapter as well, a line that I picked out, and this is what that line said in Taravangian's chapter. He now suspected that his boon had been chosen by someone more grand than that ancient spren, and that was him talking about his deal with the Night Watcher. It seems that everyone who's visited the Night Watcher, well not everybody, but some of our main characters, Dalinar, Lift, it seems that they were actually spoken to by Cultivation herself. Perhaps that's what Taravangian is alluding to here, that it wasn't just a deal with the Night Watcher, he thinks it was from something more powerful. Interesting land there, very interesting. And so begins part 2, Our Calling. I'm going to break this up into talking about the main 2 adventures of this section. Let's first talk about Shallan and Adolin, and then we'll talk about Venli, Kaladin, and Navani. Shallan and Adolin's expedition through Shadesmar was definitely the highlight for me of this section. I found it to be consistently interesting without a dull moment throughout the entire section with these characters. I love the cast of characters that were brought along with them on this mission to Shadesmar. One of my favourite additions was Stump, and if you don't remember, Stump was that old lady who ran the orphanage in Edgedancer, and it's cool to see her come back into the main story and play more of a role. Still a minor character, but cool to see characters from the novellas pop up in the main story as well. And one of the coolest parts was seeing how the Sprens kind of manifested in Shadesmar. It was so cool seeing everyone's bonded Spren and how they appeared, with like some having molten rock and glowing insides. We had ones like Windle who were made of vines. We had the Ash Spren. Man, there were so many cool depictions of Spren, and we're so lucky to get all those depictions of them throughout, those amazing illustrations, which like just brings it to life. It's like classic fantasy stuff, but I think we all like a bit of classic fantasy in there too. Now, we got a ton of lore, and I mean, this whole book is so lore heavy, and one that really stood out to me in this part was Gallant, Adolin and Dalinar's Rashadium horse. There is so much going on with Gallant. Am I right? Like, did everyone else pick up on this? Because there are so many clues that there is so much more to this horse. The first thing that Adolin kind of talks about when he sees Gallant in Shadesmar is that he has an after image as he moves around. And that reminded me of Szeth having an after image after he was resurrected by Nail and the Skybreakers. He's kind of got like this like kind of ripple effect as he moves, like almost like when you blink and sometimes get that last little half vision of something. That was very poorly described, but I know you guys know what I'm talking about. So that was the first thing that I noticed, but I wasn't really sure what it meant. It was just something I noticed. And then Adolin mentions again that he swears he can see like a light within Gallant's eyes. And just the way they communicate, it's very much like Spren and human bond. Is it like a Spren? Is it like somebody who's been resurrected? There's going to be a big revelation about that. Maybe not in this book, but at some point. There's got to be. Now, the next bit of like lore or like kind of world building that I found really interesting was Maya. I found Maya to be really, really interesting, and I found Adolin's relationship with her and how he takes the time to empathize with her and train with her and talk to her as if she is alive has really paid off, and you see her grow and almost come to life in a certain sense. I found that really, really interesting, and I want more of that, and I want to know what is the deal with these Deadeye Spren. It's really, really interesting. And the way that kind of culminated to that final moment where Adolin is fighting off those men and Maya actually thumps into his back and is defending him, and they do the stances together, like, man, that was a good scene. Chef's kiss. So yes, Gallant and Maya, I want more of this. I want more of this in the book. Let's talk about Shallan. God, man, the Shallan character work in this section, and in the whole book really, but in this section in particular, was fantastic. I feel like this is some of Brandon's best character work out of all of his books that I've read so far. I was really, really impressed with Shallan and how she was written in this section. Let's talk a bit more about that. So we saw Shallan struggling with her multiple personalities, and it was just written so smoothly and so beautifully in these sections. Like, she would switch between Veil, Radiant, and Shallan at times where you didn't even realize it, and you just kind of see how her mind is working in response to certain situations she finds herself in or certain conversations she's having with people. The most powerful one I want to talk about a little bit here, and that was when she was interrogating Beryl. So she was interrogating Beryl. She's looking for whoever the imposter is from Mraize and the Ghost Bloods, and she's interrogating Beryl as Veil, and she's being classic Veil, very intimidating, very forceful in getting what she wants, and very sneaky. Beryl just seems extremely normal and grounded and self-aware and self-reflective, and that starts to get at Shallan. She has this whole internal dialogue. She starts panicking and kind of spiraling, thinking about her past. And then you just get the line that Shallan whispers help to Beryl. And Beryl's like, are you okay? Like, what's up? And then Radiant comes in and is just incredibly cold, like giving her orders. Just the way that was written and the flow of that page was just like, one, heartbreaking to see Shallan like this, but two, just brilliantly written by Sanderson. And I found it just such a powerful, just, if you had to take one page to show what Shallan is going through and how she's struggling with her personalities, I would pick that one so far, because it was just really on point from my point of view. So speaking of that intruder, she has this communication cube from Mraize, and she thinks it's very, very familiar to herself. And she kind of decides, it's hard to know what to trust when you read Shallan's point of view, but she decides that she has used one of these before, and she's got like a vague memory of using it in her youth. If I am able to theorize about this for a second, I would wager that this has to do with Peleron, her older brother, just remembered his name, and I feel like there's a lot more of a history with that older brother. We got so little of it in her flashback chapters. I feel like there's a whole gap there where he had a lot to do with Shallan, because we know he was kind of into these secret societies. Perhaps he had something to do with Shallan being radiant or something like that. There's a lot there. There's a lot there to find out about. And as far as the intruder goes, my working theory right now is that it is Shallan, because she talks about blacking out sometimes and not knowing what the other personality did, and we keep talking about formless, and we keep talking about, you just see how unstable her mind is. And I feel like it's going to be herself that has been having a whole other life that we are unaware of as the reader. And during this section, Shallan starts to suspect Pattern as the intruder or the imposter, or the spy is probably the best word I'm thinking of among us, that's why. God, I don't want that to happen, but to be fair, he was acting extremely suspicious whilst Shallan was talking to him. Oh, can it please not be Pattern? Like, I love Pattern so much, and I couldn't stop laughing on the drawings of Pattern, that page where they had like the running image of Pattern. It was just so funny. And I love that moment where Shallan and Adolin were having this really heart-to-heart moment and they feel someone else hugging them and it's like Pattern in between them. Come on, man, that was so sweet. I love that. I feel like if it is Pattern, he has very good reasons for it. I can't see Pattern betraying Shallan. There would have to be very, very good reasons behind it, but I suppose I will read and find out. And wrapping up my chat about this section in Shadesmar, I really, really adored that scene between Adolin and Shallan where Adolin took her up to the viewpoint, they saw the Starspren, and finally Shallan comes out, the personality of Shallan comes out, and she's sketching, and they're talking, and they're finally able to get on the same sort of page together. Adolin doesn't have to keep communicating through Bale and Radiant. It's just a really sweet moment for the two of them, and it gave Adolin a chance to finally open up to Shallan and talk about his relationship with Dalinar and how Dalinar sees him almost as like an idea or an image that he needs to live up to rather than a person. And Shallan really understands that, and Adolin starts tearing up. For me, this was one of Sanderson's strongest kind of romantic scenes. I've had problems with Sanderson's romance in the past in terms of like it's perhaps not the strongest, but this is one of the first times where I really felt the connection between the two of them, and I thought it was just a beautifully written scene with just a heartwarming connection between the two of them. Soon after that, they are off and captured by the Honest Friend willingly. I have no clue what the hell is going to happen there, but I'm extremely invested, and it was tough being pulled away from them very early. Well, about halfway through the section, it felt like. Okay, let's talk about Kaladin, Venli, and Navani. So they're mostly at Urithiru during the majority of this chapter, and again, it ends in kind of like a Sanderson Avalanche kind of fashion. I'm not really sure about how people were calling this book very, very slow, but having said that, I'm not even halfway through yet, so I'll hold my judgment. Being in Kaladin's head, man, it's really, really tough in this section. Kaladin is going through a lot, and that's an understatement, but I love the direction his story and character is going. I love that he's essentially starting a mental health clinic with his father, starting to heal people like himself, even if though he's not paying that much attention to himself and kind of keeping himself busy by healing others. It's a step in the right direction. And I really enjoyed Teft staying. We needed at least one member of Bridge 4, and it was really nice that Teft was there for Kaladin and kind of like a fatherly figure in the way that Liren isn't to Kaladin. I have very mixed feelings on Liren, Kaladin's actual father, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Following Navani, I really enjoyed seeing her discoveries with Fabrials and studying with her team. I could see how some people might find this boring, but I find it really, really interesting. And I feel like in the second half, in books 6 to 10 of the Stormlight Archive, we're going to see this pay off hugely and see the technology of Roshar increase exponentially, and I feel like it's going to be a very, very different looking series by the time we get to book 7, 8, 9 because of Navani's work with her team. Okay, the attack on Urithiru by the Singers was something else. Reading from Venli's perspective was fascinating. Venli herself is pretty interesting, but I found Raboniel to really, really take the spotlight from Venli, and she's probably the best villain so far in the Stormlight Archive, mainly because I like her so much, which is not... I can't really say that for the other villains in the Stormlight Archive. She just has such a different outlook on the war. She kind of wants to work together to an extent. She still wants to kind of dominate the humans, but she knows that this war can't last how it is forever. And just the imagery of her, how tall she is, her carapace, and her powers. When she... Do you guys remember when she went into the tower and she, like, blew something into that man's face and he's like clawing at his face? It was just haunting. She's just so calm, collected, and can just destroy you with, you know, the wave of the hand. And seeing those fuse that can kind of meld into stone and meld into the earth, and the way it was described that their arms and their hands were coming out of the walls and grabbing people and just, you know, killing them, and that was so cool. And it's cool to see that the Fused are just like the singer equivalent of the Surge Binders and the Knights Radiant. It gives me clues to like how we're going to see Radiants perform and see their magic, and it's cool to hear the listener and the singer's perspective, saying that the humans don't really understand the abilities, we've had so much time with them, and to an extent you see where they're coming from, but you also see where the humans are coming from, and that's what's making this really interesting, because it's not just black and white. There are layers of grey here that there were less of in the previous books, and I feel like we're getting to a more interesting conflict here in Rhythm of War, which I'm very much enjoying. It was so cool seeing Dabbid being the person who is being contacted by the sibling in the tower, and it makes total sense. Like, he's kind of like a mute, being unable to communicate with his fellow people, so I can so see how this relationship with the sibling would have organically grown. When he was doing the Bridge 4 salute, I'm not sure if it's this or this or this, but whatever, with the wrists, the Bridge 4 salute, it was so cool seeing him trying his best to help, and it was heartbreaking to see him being judged, but we got there in the end. Sanderson just weaves in these nice light little twists that just, tickle your mind a bit, and it's cool to see how he's kind of kept track of all these minor characters, and just when you've just about forgotten them, they play a role into the story, and it's really great to see that. And this is where the attack really, really ramps up, and I love the conversation between Navani and this new dark-eyed commander, battalion lord. It was great seeing her with the battalion lord. Yes, his name was Tearfil. I loved their kind of all or nothing charge to that giant spy that is being corrupted by Raboniel, and their final stand, that final battle, was just so good, man. It was so good seeing them charge in. Even Venli was impressed. I'm like, yeah, Venli, man, let's do some more for the humans. Like, come on. Dude, when was it the Pursuer? Yeah, I think it was the Pursuer that just warps into them and just breaks their ranks, and they all die. And I got so sad because Tearfil, that dark-eyed leader, it just seemed like such a badass, and he was introduced, had his epic third act moment, and then died. But yeah, please comment if you really love that guy as well, because he stood out to me. Yeah, just to touch on that a bit more, it was great to see his conversation with Navani. Navani saying oh wow, we're actually getting dark-eyed battalion leaders, and she's like, I hope you don't find it difficult to take orders from a woman, and they have this really nice moment, and it's like, yes, good, break down this hierarchy in Roshar, let the dark guys rise, let women have their rights and abilities to lead as well. Hell yeah, man. Progressive Roshar, I'm into it. And oh god, okay, and then the heaviest part, the end of part 2, was so damn heavy with Kaladin and his father. Stormfall and Parshendi are coming to take Teft, and dude, Kaladin ain't gonna sit there. Teft is Bridge 4, man. Teft is his boy. The brutal murder, not murder, I can't say that, sorry Kaladin, not murder, but the brutal attack and eventual killing of that listener was crazy, and Liren's reaction, oh man, a bit harsh, don't you think? A bit like look what they've done to my boy, he's a murderer, he's a monster, oh god, this is gonna stick with Kaladin, this is gonna haunt him, and it's just unfair. Liren is the ultimate pacifist, but that only extends so far, right? He wants Kaladin to be something he's clearly not, and it's just such a shame because it seems like his parents are so on board when he's fulfilling that role they want him to, but the moment he shows any doubt or any wavering, it's like he goes from 0 to 100, you're a monster, you're this, you're that, yeah, it was rough to read, and I feel so I feel so bad for Kaladin, and it just feels like him and his father's relationship, I don't know if it's ever going to be repaired. It just feels like they're so far on the other ends of things. That line between Cal and Silver is wasn't it a lovely dream that we could just, be a surgeon and be normal? And she's like, yeah, what a lovely dream. And they just do their thing as they do. Yeah, which also brings me to the point, why was Kaladin not affected by what they've done at the tower, disabling all the radiants? Now, there's talk that it's because he's sworn the third ideal. I don't think it's just about the ideals. I think there's much more to it. It's also mentioned in Lif's interlude that I'm about to talk about that she is unaffected too, and it seems there's much more to it than just being at a higher level of ideals that you've sworn. Alright, moving on to the second batch of interludes, and again, great cast of interludes. So we get Vaya / Moash, and oh man, dude, I love reading from him. I get the hate, but like, don't you guys love that he's in this story? It just makes it so much better. Moash is carrying his rocks, he's loving life. I love that line where it's like, Via, he who quiets. And the next line is, he who hauls rocks. It's just like, what is going on with this guy? And we get told that Kaladin's the one thing, his one little weakness, he's tied to Bridge 4 and the boys, and he wants to save Kaladin by basically making him commit suicide. And it's just, yeah, it's, I don't know how this is going to pay off, but it was cool to see him talking to Odium and them having this chat. And Odium's like, you're very interesting, Moash. You're very different. Yeah, it was fun. Okay, Lift. Man, I love Lift. And it was so nice to hear back from her again. And I know a lot of people complain about how immature she is in the past books and her humor and blah, 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 blah. But she's young, she's immature, she's dealing with a lot of trauma, it seems like. And we're starting to get some more character progression from her, which is fantastic. She's slowly becoming a young woman, she's not liking the changes in her body, and she has resentment because she made a deal with the Night Watcher. It's teased that this was actually cultivation as well, just as with Dalinar. Taravangian talks about it perhaps being cultivation. Dalinar confirmed. Lift, maybe. Yeah, there's something bigger at play here with the Night Watcher and cultivation for sure. But yes, we get the further details about what she talked about with her and said she wanted to stay little, to be the little girl to her mother. And man, if that doesn't affect you, man, you've got a heart of ice, because that was beautiful. If that didn't get you, did the hug between Wendell and her get you? Because that got me good, man. And then now we get interesting one-on-one chicken battle, and I love that all the Rasharians call birds chickens. It's so dumb, but it's funny. We get this battle, she saves the chicken and heals it, even though the tower is under attack. Her abilities are still working. Where does this lead to? It leads to a man with a green chicken. Hey, I know a man with a green chicken. That is Mraize, right? That's Mraize. And why is he looking for Lift? At first I thought it was Nail, but yeah, no, it's got to be Mraize, right? He has that green bird. Also, tidbit from Lift's chapter, she has a strange flute that she's found. Is that Wit's flute that Kaladin misplaced? Maybe. And our boy Taravangian is back. Dude, I love Taravangian, and I loved seeing him on his way to be, getting killed by Dalinar, because his betrayal is about to happen. And his conversation with Odium was great, and I don't want to say that Taravangian is actually that stupid on his bad days. It just seems like he favors compassion more than his raw intelligence. This chapter seems to highlight this because he was pretty cluey, even though he was having one of his dumb days. Anyway, before I talk about his conversation with Odium, did you guys notice, who are reading this in book format, when Odium talks to Taravangian, it was regular text. When he spoke to Moash, it was caps. And when he spoke to Sja-anat, it was italics. Very interesting. For the Spren, I believe it's because he created her and he's like almost in her head, so italics. With Moash, he's like trying to be a god figure. Well, he is a god, but trying to be intimidating, hence the caps lock. And with Taravangian, it's just regular. So is that because Taravangian's so old and cute and frail? Or, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I noticed that and thought I'd mention it. But yes, we see Taravangian see that Renarin and Seth are the kind of blank spots in Odium's visions. And I found that interesting because it seems like Renarin can show people what could be in their future. He's got some sort of effect on time and seeing into the future, because we saw it how he showed Moash himself in the Bridge 4 uniform. So interesting to see how Renarin has an effect on even the god scale here. And Seth is an interesting one. I'm not too sure what to make of that, but I feel like we're going to get a huge moment from Seth in this book. And that's the discussion on part 2 of Rhythm of War. I hope you guys really enjoyed the more extended format, covering both sets of interludes. And if there's anything else you'd like to hear my thoughts on that I didn't mention here in the video, I'm happy as always to chat with you down in the comments. Thank you to all those new people who have subscribed and are jumping on board. I hope you're reading along with me, and I can't wait to hear what you thought of this section. I thought it was just as strong as part 1. Even if it was less action oriented, it was extremely depth. It had so much depth with character and did have plenty of action as well. So I really hope you guys felt the same as me. But if not, let's chat about it in the comments. Many more Stormlight videos to come, many more other videos to come. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch. See you later.